So, I hear from you
Yes.
right before that you have a really good food heist.
I do have a really good food heist.
Okay.
This is the last of our historical food heists.
Ooh.
You ready
Okay.
for this?
Mm-hmm.
So during World War II, we rationed things.
Yes.
In the States, but also in other countries in Europe. England and Scotland and so on were rationing things very heavily as well, including whiskey.
I believe we also rationalized a lot of things during World War II.
We also did. We justified a lot of things as well. In the Outer Hebrides, off the north coast of Scotland,
Okay.
there was a ship called the SS Politician that ran aground during the middle of the war and during the middle of the whiskey rations. And guess what its hold was full of?
Whiskey?
Correct.
Wow. So there's a joke there. It's the politician, it's off course and misguided, and its belly is full of whiskey.
Yeah.
When no one else has any.
Like that political cartoon writes itself,
Yes.
right? So what happened over the course of several months is that the people on the island would sneak out in the night and take all of this whiskey out of the hold. 20 of them ended up being arrested and imprisoned, but only for a couple of weeks. Much of the whiskey was eventually returned, but then they kept sneaking back out and stealing it again. Finally, they got another ship up there, loaded all the whiskey, sailed it off to its, some warehouse somewhere where most of it was stolen en route.
How was it stolen en route?
I don't know.
Pirates or just
I assume sailors on the ship?
just drinking it?
Yeah. So
Wonder why it ran aground in the first place. Maybe it's a miracle it didn't run aground a second or third or fifth time.
Right? So anyway, I don't know if that's a heist, but there were at very least several daring midnight raids to sneak down into the water and oil-filled engine room of this ship and steal bottles of whiskey. So that, at least I can imagine the movie in my head. And there actually was a movie made of this, though I forget what it was called. Probably called, hey, there's a bunch of wet whiskey out there. I don't know what it was called.
What was that title, Dan?
I can't. You know how bad I am at titling things.
Oh, man.
Let me
There's a podcast there sometime because
you know how bad I am at titling things.
I am also
the podcast.
erratic at titling things. Sometimes I'm good. Sometimes I'm awful.
Okay. So the actual movie title is slightly better than mine. It is Whiskey Galore with a exclamation point.
That's not a very good title.
No, it's not. Any title that has punctuation in it is already,
Oh, there's got to be some really great
some really great one that has punctuation in it.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, Doc?
Yeah, there
Question
you go.
mark right at the end of there. Well, there you
That's
go.
one of your favorite movies.
Disproved my own theory.
Now, at the same time, I don't think that's a very good title.
Whiskey Galore?
No. What's up, Doc?
What's up? You don't like What's Up, Doc?
I have become fond of the movie after my wife has strapped me to a chair with chains and forced me to watch it multiple times.
She is doing the Lord's work.
But I think it's a dumb title. Is it referencing? It's referencing Bugs Bunny.
It's a direct reference to Bugs Bunny, and basically it's their way of saying, hey, look, we're doing wacky cartoon-style shenanigans, but with people.
Right. So your title, relying on a reference to some other media, to that regard, seems like a bad idea to me. Partially because I also think that Bugs Bunny doing What's Up, Doc was probably a reference to something before. It's like
maybe it might have just been the voice actor, because apparently a lot of just how he talked came into the characters.
But regardless, I think that's an awful title.
It makes me wonder what other famous cartoon quotes would be used as movie titles. Like what catchphrase of a cartoon character. And all I can think of, literally the only one that comes into my head is just Mickey going, and that's an even worse title, right?
Does Mickey...
I
I'm
can't,
so baffled.
I can't do the laugh. But Mickey has like a high-pitched laugh that would make a terrible movie title.
It would, but Mickey laughing is the one you go, not like Woody Woodpecker, who has an iconic laugh.
See?
Not.
That would be great. Would you spell it out? Or would it just be like in brackets, imagine Woody Woodpecker laughing, and that's the title of the movie? That's actually an amazing title.
That's a pretty
movie.
good title. For all the fact that I don't like What's Up Doc for referencing something else. Like, I don't know. I think it's a weak title. One of the reasons I had never watched it is the title just didn't tell me
anything
about the movie. And so I'm just like, what kind of, is it a comedy? I didn't know. Maybe if I were more steeped in Looney Tunes culture and would be like, oh, they're obviously referencing Bugs Bunny, which means they're making a screwball comedy. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there aren't really any strong naming conventions for screwball comedies or farces.
Yeah.
So they didn't have much to rely on.
Happened on the way to the forum is one that I do like. I think
that's very good, and again is a reference, but this time to like kind of vaudeville comedian.
Yeah,
which is what they were going for in the show.
And I think the reason it is a better title is you know what kind of movie it is, even if you don't know the reference. A funny thing happened on the way to a place. You're like, okay, it's going to be a comedy. It's going to be funny. And you mention the forum, you're like, okay, it's maybe historical, it's Roman historical comedy. Yeah. And lo and behold, that's what it is.
Well, and taking, a very specific like Catskills comedian joke setup and turning it into a Roman thing.
Yes. It gives you your strange attractor, which is your mashup of two things. And so that's just such a better title for a very similar type of movie. So,
I do need to tell you, when I was finishing up Dark One, I needed an address for something, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was Paul's house or something. And I totally stole the one out of What's Up, Doc. At the end, where they send one character to the wrong place, it's something Dorella Street. I used that in Dark One. I don't know if it will survive till the final print edition, but that's what's in there now.
How do you title your books?
How do I title my books?
Yes.
Poorly.
You have a couple of really great titles.
Most of my famous titles were given to me by the editors. Yeah. I Am Not a Serial Killer. That is literally the placeholder that I just named the document, thinking I'll come up with a better name later. And our mutual friend and editor, Moshe Feder, he's like, no, that's absolutely the title. You have to use that. And then I Don't Want to Kill You came from my German editor, Karsten. Over Your Dead Body, that was him too. So, yeah.
So your editors are naming your books?
My editors are naming my books.
Yeah, this is
those three.
A thing that we run into with Dan is your endings are always very different from how they end up in the final book, shall we say?
For sure.
And your titles are... Now, I wish I could joke with you about this, but I find that I have a lot of trouble with titles sometimes, too.
Titles are hard.
It's a tough sort of thing to encapsulate the entire soul of a story into 2 or 3 words, maybe 5 or 6, depending on your type of story, that readers are going to judge so much based on that. And then if the book becomes famous, then that association becomes associated with you, and it's rough.
Yeah, it is hard. One of my titles, I think my middle grade series, those all have great titles, and those I'm very proud of. Zero G basically kind of wrote the book knowing that would be the title for it, and in many ways structured certain elements so that could be its title.
I've done that. I decided on that I was going to name a book The Way of Kings before I wrote The Way of Kings.
Yeah.
Now, Stormlight was growing out of a bunch of different things in my brain at the time, and I'd written some elements before, but I just had that title come to me. I'm like, The Way of Kings. It feels like a fantasy book title.
It does.
It kind of works with a lot of the naming conventions, and there's something about it. And
that title famously was around for so long before the book was around that it had a multitude of fake reviews on Amazon, right? Or Goodreads or something.
I don't know that we've told this story on the podcast before.
No, we haven't.
Maybe
Are those archived somewhere?
We've got them. We've got screenshots. So maybe I can find them for Adam. They might be in reference on my Dropbox. So when I was first selling books to Tor, this is 2003.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years
Way
ago.
back in the day.
Tor Moshe wanted to buy 2 of my books. He's like, well, I really like Elantris, which is why it's made to him. What else are you working on? And I said, I've got this project called The Way of Kings. And I sent in the book, and it was like 300,000 words. It's Way of Kings Prime, which people can download
And that's
now.
one that I've read, I think, in Writing Group.
You did read that in Writing Group. And it was a big, beastly book that spiraled out of control on me by the end, but was super ambitious and things like this. And he got that book, and he called me back, and he was just like, I don't know what to do with this. I love how ambitious it is, but it is a giant commitment to go and ask them to buy this other book as a part of a different contract for a much smaller scale book. Do you have anything else? And I said, yes, I'm working on a new book called Mistborn. I think it's going to be right what you want. It is going to launch a series, but it's more self-contained than Stormlight is. And plus, Way of Kings doesn't work yet, and I need to revise it before it does.
Yeah.
And so we never signed a contract for Way of Kings. We signed a contract for Elantris and Mistborn Book 1.
Yeah.
For some total of $20,000 for both books.
Nice.
Yes. They had offered $5,000 per book, and Joshua argued them up to $10,000 per book. So that happened, and then mysteriously, a few years later, an Amazon listing for The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson popped up. And I have no idea to this day how this happened.
I was going to ask because I've never understood how that appeared either.
Right? Like, how did they get a hold that I was writing this book, and who put up a listing? Was it some mistake on Tor's part where they had thought that they were buying this other book because for some reason it was misnoted, and they were just listing all the books they were going to have for sale and making Amazon pages for them? Did Amazon try to scoop and heard somehow internally through some industrial and espionage of new books coming out and got the wrong one? Why would they make a title page, a page for selling The Way of Kings, a pre-order page? The Way of Kings came out in 2010, the one that I wrote. This appeared in like 2006, and I had no intention at that point of releasing it anytime soon. Well, fans started reading my books and started becoming fans. I guess people started reading my books and started to become fans. And so they started to research me. They started to get really excited by Mistborn. This was about the Mistborn 2/3 era where I started to actually pick up a fandom.
Yeah.
And they found this book. And they're like, what is this? And I said, oh, it's this thing. And I told them a little bit about it. It'll be someday my big epic fantasy project, I should say. But it's not ready yet. So they latched onto this and started creating fake reviews because Amazon let you submit reviews of things even if it wasn't for sale.
Yeah. And even
it let
if they
you
didn't exist.
send product shots. And so my fans started making fake book covers for The Way of Kings and uploading them to this thing and releasing. It had dozens of reviews. For a book that didn't exist.
Well, and reviews that referenced other books.
Yes.
Like The Road of Kings and the Path of Princes and every combination of means of travel and position of authority.
And the best one came when someone photoshopped an epic fantasy version of Elvis, the king.
Okay.
And made a fake book cover with Elvis on the cover with a big quote at the bottom from like the New York Post or something made up. It said, a honka burning good book. And posted that with all these fake. There it is.
Yeah, we'll put that up on YouTube or something.
What does it actually say? A honkin' good book. Is that what it says? A honking good book. Who do they attribute that to? Is it the newspaper or is it Terry Goodkind? Or
Terry Goodkind. It's spelled incorrectly.
Goodkind spelled incorrectly. Different Terry Goodkind.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It actually is Terry Goodkind. They spelled it very incorrectly.
So that one was my favorite when that one popped up. And then eventually Tor got a wind of this and like, we can't have this. This is too much shenanigans.
We need to stop
and
this
so we quickly got a bunch of screenshots of some of the reviews, and then it vanished like the next week.
Yeah. Now, when you actually did start putting out Stormlight, was reusing the title Way of Kings inspired in any part by the fact that people already knew it? Or was it already in your head?
No, it was.
I'm going to use this one day, no matter what.
It was really solidified. What that like?
Because you were talking about Way of Kings back in college.
I was.
So,
I had built Stormlight, and half of Stormlight started as Dragonsteel, right? And you read that in college too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very committed to that title.
Okay.
But other titles I've had the worst trouble with, like my YA series. Right? Skyward was easy. I wanted to name it Skyward. In fact, people were kind of against that because there's like a teenage software for turning in your grades in schools that's called Skyward or something, a backend that is used by various. And so the people at the YA publisher are like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I like the title.
Gotta use it.
It conveys momentum.
You didn't consider using Canvas? That's the other big grade submission software.
Something just like Canvas, though, as I understand. And so that one was easy.
Okay.
But then each of the other titles have been very hard because I come up with something, and then you get the editors and marketing people at the publisher get these looks. They're like, yeah.
I don't know about this.
It's a good working title.
But it's not. See, I used to work for years and years and years in marketing and advertising as part of, creative department for a bunch of different companies. And at one of them, where we made home fitness machines,
yes,
we had to name just countless treadmills and ellipticals and things, rowers and bikes every year, every season. And always the thing that they were hammering on was, give us a Hemi. Do you remember those Hemi commercials? Like where the cars would be stopped at the light and some like rowdy dudes would say, "Is that thing got a Hemi?" And Hemi is a Latin prefix that means half. Like it is the least inspiring word.
Yeah, I always saw those commercials and had no idea what they were selling. To this day, I couldn't tell you what they're selling.
It was an engine. A Hemi is a cool engine.
But I don't buy an engine. I buy a car.
Exactly. But you buy this car because it has a Hemi, because you saw some rowdy dudes in a truck asking if it had one.
I've never asked what kind of engine my car has.
No, I don't either.
That's super common.
You and I are not car people at all.
Hemi, Cummins, that's a thing.
Okay,
but among car people, it was a big deal. And they always wanted, like, give us a Hemi. Give us something that's that iconic. And the answer always is, well, okay, give us the marketing budget for those commercials that turned this stupid word that means half into something that sounds awesome and car people love it. And without that backing, no, I can't give you a Hemi. I can't just come up with a word that magically everyone is going to love.
Man,
that's not how titles work.
That phrase sounds like it should get us an explicit rating.
I can't give you a Hemi.
Yeah, the marketing people, I don't know. They do know their thing, but it's very strange in that in a series, like the first book, I can totally understand being concerned about. The fifth book of the Stormlight Archive or the fourth or third book of Skyward, the title doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does, but it doesn't.
There's a dwindling tail of people. Your audience is very explicitly the people who already bought and loved the first ones.
Yes.
And so, at that point, you could call it, here's another book. And the same people would buy it, right?
Yeah. The third book of the Skyward series, I wanted to call Nowhere, which is kind of like the book involves this alternate dimension called the Nowhere. Your various upside down or neverwhere or whatever, it's your alternate dark dimension.
Yeah. Now, and you called that one Cytonic.
Yes.
You broke the card cycle rule because we had Skyward, Skysight, and then you didn't do Sky again on the third.
It was Starsight. It was
okay.
starting
Starsight.
So I did that intentionally because if you do it 3 times, you have to do it 4 times.
Okay.
If you do it twice, you do not have to do it 3 times. 2 is not a sequence.
2 into
2
3
is a coincidence.
It's absolutely a sequence.
No, it's not. It's not. If your name is Daniel, I don't even know what your middle name is. Daniel Wells. Daniel Andrew Wells Jr. You do not have to name your kid third.
No, that's true.
But if you are the third and you got to live with a cool name, because being a third is cool, and your dad had to deal with Junior, which is kind of awful.
Junior, third is definitely cooler than Junior.
Yes.
But I would argue that 4th, 5th, etc., that's still awesome.
It is. That's why I'm saying if your parents had to deal with Junior and they respected you enough to give you third, which is cool, you at that point have to do 4th. Alan.
You would be obligated.
Alan Layton III.
Alan.
Who did not name his son Alan Layton IV.
He didn't?
No, he didn't.
What kind of a...
This kid's named after Sam Vimes.
Combo breaker?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. In the same way, if you're a junior, you don't have to do a third. You can. It's a good idea because third is cool, right?
Third is cool.
In the same way, starting 2 books, I did it with the Stormlight also. I have The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance that both have an of in the center. If I'd done the third one as that kind of that fantasy, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, this,
blank of blank,
I would have been trapped to do it for the rest of the series.
So you had to break out of it early.
So I had to break out of it on the third one. If I ever wanted to be naming books other things, I think. And so...
Now, I should not be griping about this because, again, back to the John Cleaver books, each trilogy has 1 and 3 follow the same pattern, and the middle book breaks the pattern.
Is Mr. Monster middle book?
Mr. Monster is the second book.
Okay, I always
so the
think
first
that's the
one
third
is
one.
I blank. I am not a serial killer. The third one is I don't want to kill you.
Yes.
Those are obviously in a pattern with each other. And the second one is Mr. Monster. In the second trilogy, the first one is The Devil's Only Friend, and the last one is Nothing Left to Lose. Both of those were overtly quotes from 70s folk songs.
Yes.
And that's what I tried to do with book 2 for a long time. It was 6 Crooked Highways, which is a Bob Dylan quote. And then, again, Karsten, my German editor, came up with Over Your Dead Body, and we all said, oh, well, that's way better. It breaks the pattern, but we're absolutely going to do it.
I think you're okay. No one would even have noticed because you're breaking out on the second one, which establishes,
but see, now that I've done that 2 trilogies in a row, if for some reason I ever do a third John Cleaver trilogy, which I don't have plans to do, but were I to, I would feel obligated to do the same thing again. Have a first and third title that match and a second that doesn't.
What do you feel about the whole series title, book title? So I've run into this thing with Mistborn. Mistborn, I called The Final Empire, the first book. And the series was going to be Mistborn.
Yeah.
And this was one of those things where the publisher was like, calling it the final something when it's the first book in a series might be confusing.
Yeah.
That's just the U.S. editor. The UK editor's like, it's a great title. And we'll name it The Final Empire. And the U.S. editor, Moshe's like, with the marketing people, what if we just called it Mistborn? Like Star Wars Episode 4 is just Star Wars in everyone's brain, even though it does have a subtitle. We'll put The Final Empire on the title page.
It didn't have a subtitle for a while.
Yes, it didn't.
But yes, I had the same problem, similar problem with Extreme Makeover, because part of my whole joke in the title was it was called Extreme Makeover Apocalypse Edition,
right?
Which was very overtly a pastiche of Extreme Makeover Home Edition,
right?
And we got that cleared through legal. Tor said, we're not going to get in trouble. We can call it this if we want. But then, even after that legal work had been done, they backed out and said, we're really worried that if people think this is the Apocalypse edition of the book, they're going to look for the normal edition of the book and
that's
be
dumb.
confused.
Oh,
and
that's
sad.
so dumb.
So it does say on the title page Apocalypse Edition, but on the cover it does not.
That's those marketing people sometimes. Jeremy's not here, right? Those marketing people sometimes. Like, I can kind of almost get the Final Empire thing, And it also meant that we were replacing one good title with another good title. Mistborn has worked really well.
Yeah.
But you just got a great title replaced with a medium-ish title.
Extreme Makeover is still a very good title.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still very proud of it. For a book about cloning technology and a beauty company that destroys the world, Extreme Makeover is a very good title. But Apocalypse Edition is so much better.
Isn't Extreme Makeover... I was shocked that's not trademarked.
It was not trademarked among books.
Okay.
It's trademarked as TV shows.
Right.
And various forms of merchandise connected to them.
That makes sense.
But as a book title, no. It had never been used. We could use it if we wanted.
And you don't reference the television show at all, and so that's why you'd be...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the television show. That was just my own stupid joke that I was making.
Now, you might think that I would think that's a bad title because I was saying your title referencing something else with What's Up, Doc. But yours is topical. It's when the show was doing well, you wrote it, that therefore kind of borrows some fame in a way.
Yeah.
It is part of the gestalt. Is that how you say that word?
Gestalt.
Gestalt.
That's how I would say it.
And so it actually works as a topical title, but only if you, I think, have the Apocalypse Edition, because as just Extreme Makeover, I would assume that's about the show.
Really?
Yeah. Because if there's a show called Extreme Makeover, and then there's a book called Extreme Makeover, if there's a show called The Wheel of Time, and the book series is not, that's called The Wheel of Time, is not related to it at all, I would be very suspicious of that.
Yes. And this is where we get into, first of all, back to the legal and trademark copyright issues. You could name the next Stormlight book Gone with the Wind if you wanted to. Like,
because
titles are not protected.
Aren't protected, but some things are. Like, we have been able to trademark Stormlight Archive.
Oh,
so
okay.
Series titles are. Book titles are not, which is actually a good thing, because there's lots of generic-ish titles that can get reused and things like that.
Yeah.
That it's good for the industry to have that. And I actually, I think this distinction is good, because having being able to trademark Star Wars as the name of the whole thing you're doing, but not trademark individual titles, gives you kind of a halfway point between.
Yeah. Well, and also, going back again to my days naming treadmills.
Yeah.
Those are very strict. And because we needed something that we could trademark, we had to do extensive searches for every name we proposed to make sure that it was not already in use in our categories. If you had to do that for book titles, you'd never be able to name another book.
No, you wouldn't.
Which is why, everyone's MMO character is some ridiculous combination of letters and numbers and things that we would much rather call ourselves just Night Slayer, but we have to be Night Slayer 72 or whatever.
I like what they've started to do on those, by the way. Tangent. A lot of the games I've been saying just let you name yourself Night Slayer, and then they have a hidden number attached to it that's on your character profile. Yeah. It's like Night Slayer, and then you're like, user number this.
Yeah.
And so...
Which is different. Which is a good way of doing this.
Yeah.
My book, The Hollow City.
Which is a great title.
Thank you very much. It is a great title. It got reused just a couple of years after. What's his name, who did the Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children. The second book in that series is The Hollow City. And so, and that book is a zillion times more popular than my book, The Hollow City. So when people go looking for his book, sometimes they will stumble across mine and wonder what it is.
Yeah, The Hollow City is one of Dan's experimental books.
Yes.
That should say something, because if it's experimental for Dan, then...
Yeah. It was in part the book that inspired Legion.
Yes, it was. My Legion series.
Legion was you reading my weird experimental book and saying, okay, this is good, but I can do this in a way that sells.
Yes, basically, it was. It was like, and I actually tried to get you to write Legion. And you're like, Brandon, you should write that book series.
You should write it yourself.
That sounds like a Brandon magic system.
Said, Brandon, a lot of aspiring writers come to me and with book ideas.
Says the guy who's written 2 books with me now.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't make too much fun. But I was trying to do something very specific and very thrillery and very
It's
kind
really
of dark
good
and
book.
mind-bendy with Hollow City, which is not really what Legion is.
No.
Though they both share the same core premise of let's delve really deep into schizophrenia.
Yeah. Legion is, what if it were a superpower? And Hollow City is,
What is Hollow City?
What if this really, really sucked?
What if
Oh,
this
it's
sucked,
realistic.
but also there was weird supernatural things going on, and the same themes reflect like 9 times.
Yeah, the idea of what if someone who was legitimately schizophrenic treated very well and respectfully. I mean, you have some family members.
My brother has schizophrenia.
That are schizophrenic, a family member, and yet this person that you are delving into the psychology in a very respectful way also is experiencing supernatural things.
Yeah.
And you don't know, are they real or are they not real?
And in a way, actually, by the end of Hollow City, schizophrenia is his superpower that helps him defeat the monsters. Sort of, kind of. But, yeah. What else? I had one other title thing that I was going to say.
Oh, yeah?
And now I don't remember what it is. Have you? Well, here, let me ask this question, because I will occasionally stumble across this. And I'll offer an example, but I'm going to ask the question first. Have you ever had or come across a title that is just so flawless you wish you'd thought of it first?
Oh, Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park is a really good one.
Just so good, even though most of the dinosaurs are not from the Jurassic period. And it is such a good title.
I found, actually, while researching Hollow City, a beautiful little kind of nonfiction book called The Hypochondriac's Guide to 100 Diseases You Probably Already Have, which is one of my favorite titles of all time.
That is an awesome title. I honestly think The Hollow City is like, oh, wow, that's such a good title. I wish I could have named a book The Hollow City.
You should have named your Legion The Hollow City.
For what reason?
Just because we could.
Okay. See, I would go some very fantasy direction for the Hollow City. That would have been, there's just, I often run across cool words used in a fantasy setting, be like, that's a cool word. I'm going to have to find a place to use that word, but now I can't use it in the same way that this other thing that I'm experiencing has used it. And so that's, like Elden Ring is using tarnished for people who are the tarnished. That's a really great term. It evokes something. It has a feel to it. It works very well in their lore. The tarnished. It's just like you're always in a fantasy, at least me. I'm always looking for names for groups of people, names of this, this order of knights, names for this this team that people name themselves, names for this group of outcasts, and finding ones that work is very difficult, and them nailing one called like the tarnished, so good.
Well, and in particular with fantasy, finding one that hasn't been used a million times already.
Yeah.
There was, I remember Tor.com did a few years ago some really funny series of taking like the word cloud of fantasy novels and finding statistically the words that pop up the most often.
Yes.
And they're all
Shadow of the
Night Dragon, something like that, which you can absolutely think of 10 different books that all have most of those words in the title.
I think that was a Scalzi thing.
Scalzi ended up writing some like a fake chapter for one of them.
Okay,
I don't know if it
is?
originated with him or not. Maybe it did. Sorry, John.
I could see John just joking with his editor and them coming up with this in him, but or maybe
throwing that out there.
But Shadow of the Night Dragon. For the longest time in sci-fi fantasy, titles with the word dragon in it sold appreciably better, and science fiction titles with the word star in them sold appreciably better. I don't know if this is cause or correlation, right? Because for the longest time, dragons were, back in the 80s, were the thing. All the dragon books.
Yeah.
Everybody was writing dragon books, and this was partially because Anne McCaffrey sold so well and is a fantastic writer and just wrote these amazing books. And so there were lots of copycats. And then she was,
Yeah. But Dragon is still today an awesome thing.
Yes.
Even among audiences who have never even heard of Anne McCaffrey.
Yes.
I've got, book 2 in my science fiction middle grade is Dragon Planet, which is, again, a title that I think works very well. It says fantasy and science fiction at the same time. And when I am at a convention and an 8-year-old walks by the booth, they will immediately see that title and think, oh, this is the book for me.
Yeah.
Dragon Planet will grab them. And then I have to say, that's the second book. Here's the first one. And they're like, 0G, I don't even know what that means.
Right. So you done messed up is what you're saying?
Done messed up. No, because the parents will be like, oh yeah, let's just buy them both. And so that works well for me. The thing that I think I messed up is I called my Cyberpunk series the Mirador series.
Right.
Which at the time I was very excited about that because I was like, this is all about the neighborhood where they live. This makes perfect sense. And in hindsight, no, it absolutely should have been the Cherry Dogs because that's the name of the team.
Yeah, the team.
The sports team. And yeah, the Cherry Dog books makes a million times more sense and is more marketable than just the Mirador books.
I don't know. Mirador's a good word.
It's a good word. I like it, but Cherry Dogs would have been better.
Boy, if I messed up any titles, they're titles that I regret. Trying to think. I mean, I tell the story. I've told it before on the podcast that the Elantris was originally named Adonis.
Yep.
And then
spelled exactly like Adonis.
Because I was just coming up with aeons for the language, and you guys are like, "This is a great book. What does it have to do with the Greek god?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." I guess demigod, maybe. I don't know what he was.
That is my foreword for the anniversary edition of Elantris. If you can get a hold of that, I have a whole essay about that. But
but you guys,
we caught you before you named it the Spirit of Adonis.
Yes. And then it was the Spirit of Elantris for a while, which is a pun about the book. And Dave was like, just call it Elantris. Elantris is a cool, evocative word. Just go with that. It's better than making it more clunky. And so thank you, Dave, up in heaven, for your help naming my book.
And that feels like a much more old school thing, right? Like to name your fantasy book one made-up word. Like that's a Tigana, Paralandria, like that kind of stuff that I don't see as often anymore.
No, you don't. Now we entered an era where blood in the title was the thing. That was the mid-aughts to early teens.
It's a grim, dark thing, I'm assuming.
I guess. But for a while, blood in the title was your like big hallmark. And I don't know where it's going now. I haven't really looked at the new ones to see. At least it's not going in the way that all of those mangas and light novels go. Have you read these things?
And we've talked about light novels before, and I maintain still that I want all titles to be like 17 words long. How's that, Ben?